All right, welcome to the Young Turks. We got a great show. You can tell because I'm almost yelling. All right, lots and lots of drama. So there's so many amazing stories. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have responded to Israel. They did a press conference today. And then there's a response to the response. There's Trump madness. Scaramucci's on the show today. Anna won't let me call him the mooch, but he's talking about an open rebellion against Trump by former cabinet members. So we're gonna have him on in the third hour and talk to him about it. So don't miss that interview. That's it.
Former cabinet members.
Yeah.
Oh, very bold.
All right.
They're so bold.
Hold. Wait till.
Let me interview him.
Well, no, I won't. We'll talk about it off air if you want. Of course, have at it.
No, I know. You're not stopping me from doing it. I just. Like, don't give them cute nicknames. Just don't.
Okay, all right.
Unacceptable.
Okay, so anyway, Scar's on at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Good, I like that.
Okay, so and then, but look, there's one more thing I want to tell you because I know that all of you can't watch the whole 2-3 hour show. There's 2 hours of news, then there's the interviews, and then there's the post game just for members. That's the last half hour. But I don't want you to miss the story about the cops. Pantaleo was fired. We'll get to that. I'm not giving that away. But the NYPD's reaction, where they're crying and crying and crying, I have very strong opinions on that. Look, easy way to get the whole show, of course, is by becoming a member, tyt.com/join. You can fast forward to that. And now, by the way, the episodes are uploaded immediately after the show. It's newfangled technology that we're using. You guys asked for that, so it doesn't take, there's no more lag, okay? Goes up right away. Anyways, but if you can't do that, don't want to do that, of course that's totally cool. Just wait a little bit here on the live show and we're gonna get to that story in a little bit, and it's a really important one. All right, Anna, what's up?
All right, let's get to the news.
I'd consider myself a white nationalist and I would consider myself a member of the alt-right.
That was James Patrick Reardon in Ohio, and he was actually arrested over the weekend because he had put out a video where he was shooting a gun and threatening to shoot up a Jewish community center near where he lives. In the short video posted on Reardon's Instagram account on July 11th, he fires a gun and the sounds of screams and sirens can be heard in the background. The video was captioned, "Police identified the Youngstown Jewish Family Community Center as local white nationalist Seamus O'Riordan."
This shooter and Seamus.
Seamus, yeah.
Okay, but it's fascinating. I've never seen a white nationalist racist guy so pleasant in a mugshot. Not so pleasant when he's threatening to shoot and kill everyone. But the reason I bring it up is not just because it's weird and amusing and off, right? But because I think he is actually happy to be caught. These guys are literally dying for attention, and a lot of them go through with the shooting and then get killed. But they're like, as long as I get the attention. This guy looks like he just wanted to draw attention to himself. Like, I'm really, really about to do the shooting, and luckily it didn't happen and nobody was killed. But like his mugshot does tell a part of the story, and whether it's Muslim extremists, right-wing extremists, white nationalist extremists, a lot of it is about me, give me attention because I'm a loser and I have no way of getting fame or attention to me or relevance in my life other than doing this extreme act. And so I think the mugshot is actually a little telling.
Right, well, the authorities said that he showed absolutely no remorse when he was arrested. He seems pretty proud of himself. And I just want to be clear in that he might want attention. I think that there's definitely validity to that. But at the same time, he is a white nationalist and genuinely believes some of the horrendous things we hear from white nationalists in this country today. In fact, he was part of the hate rally that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Katie Couric happened to interview him. So I'm gonna show you that video. This was a video done for National Geographic, and just listen to what James Patrick Reardon had to say.
I'd consider myself a white nationalist and I would consider myself a member of the alt-right.
And what does that mean to you?
White nationalist, I want a homeland for white people, and I think every race should have a homeland for their own race.
So do you agree that with the guy who organizes Jason Kessler, that America should be 80 to 85% white?
Yes.
and why?
I think there's a demographic decline going on, not only here, but in Europe, and we need some place that can be a white homeland.
So again, this is another extremely young white guy who has somehow been radicalized. Later in the interview, he was asked what his parents think about his actions and the fact that he was going to attend the Charlottesville hate march. And both of his parents were very much against it. But somehow he's been radicalized in this way and thinks that there's some sort of issue with the declining white population in America. By the way, authorities also found a lot of weapons in his home. Authorities found anti-Semitic and white nationalist propaganda in Reardon's house and also seized multiple semi-automatic weapons, dozens of rounds of ammunition, a gas mask, and bulletproof armor. In the next photo, you can actually see the weapons that they took from the raid.
Yeah, so first of all, someone should ask the president, is this one of the very fine people he was referring to that was on that side in Charlottesville? So the president talked about, hey, both sides are responsible for the violence, even though only one side did the violence, that was the right wing, and that there were very fine people on both sides. Which ones? And so you have to remember that Charlottesville, it was the worst of the worst. Even groups like Proud Boys were like, don't go. And a lot of that group is considered a hate group by many and has reveled in violence, including recently. And even they were like, I wouldn't go there. The Charlottesville, they chanted, the Jews will not replace us. And so that connects me to the next part of this, which is that I don't think people realize how much Jewish Americans are in danger and under attack currently by the radical right wing. And you might be wondering why, like, don't they hate Muslims more? And they've got and Latinos, and those are the folks that are mainly in the news. No, if you go down the rabbit hole of their conspiracy theories, it always ends with the Jews. And because they can't, even in their crazy irrational minds, they can't find a way to say that Muslims are in charge of the country or that Latino immigrants are in charge of the country. So they go to, it must be the Jews. They're the ones with the money and they control the media and the banks, etc. All of these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. So to that point, a really interesting fact that I wanted to bring up to you guys is, so hate crimes motivated by religious bias have risen by about a quarter, 24%, between 2015 and 2017. That doesn't even get to 2018 and 2019 where they got way worse, right? But of that, the group that is targeted most is Jews. And their percentage of being targeted among the different religious attacks went from 51%. It was already really high. It was already the majority of all attacks against religion, okay? Against religious people, based on their religion. It is now at 58%. So it's not Muslims, it's not Christians, it's not Buddhists, it's 58% of the attacks are against Jews. Because in all of these crazy, extreme right-wing propaganda, it always comes back to the Jews rule everything, so you gotta hit the Jews. So this guy, that's why they did Charlottesville. That's why in Charlottesville they didn't chant the Muslims will not replace us. They chanted the Jews will not replace us. That's why when Donald Trump equivocates on Charlottesville, other than it's being atrocious on 1,000 different levels, it's as anti-Semitic an act as you could possibly do. And yet we're not having conversation about how outrageously anti-Semitic the president is. And these guys, of course, oftentimes encouraged by the president and other right-wing ideologies that they hear. Yeah, don't get me wrong, they hate Muslims, they hate Latinos, transgendered people. We got another case coming up there. But again, this guy looking to target a synagogue. Synagogue targeted in Pittsburgh, a synagogue targeted in San Diego. A lot of people killed in those events, obviously, and constantly comes back to the synagogues. By the way, this is not talked about much. In Charlottesville, Nazis were marching in front of a synagogue and the people inside were deathly afraid to come out. I mean, that's in the United States of America. And Donald Trump couldn't find the courage or the inclination to condemn that forcefully. So that's where we are today. And I say he's looking for attention. Don't get me wrong, so was the guy who shot up the synagogue in Pittsburgh and killed 11 people. It's just that whether we caught him or didn't catch them in time and to what degree they're seeking attention. But the way that they're seeking attention is through murder. That's why he had all those weapons ready to go. And thank God the cops caught him before he actually did something. And one more thing about that. That is why the Department of Homeland Security dismantling a group looking into right-wing extremists is literally deadly dangerous. Because these guys are online like this guy, putting up videos saying, hey, I'm going to shoot up a synagogue. And post after post from different guys saying, look, I'm looking forward to murdering people. And we don't have enough guys at Homeland Security and otherwise chasing them down. This is the low-hanging fruit. I mean, they're looking like they in New York, they were targeting mosque after mosque after mosque. They went to New Jersey to try to look for people inside mosques, and what they found was, in that case, after years of looking into it, innocent Muslims praying, right? That's a giant waste of resources. I'm not saying you don't look after Muslim extremists online. Hell yes, you do, okay? But use your limited resources in a smart way that targets the people who are online going, me right here, I'm looking to murder people, right? Well, then those are the guys you should target no matter what side of the political spectrum they come from.
So some people might find what I'm about to say super controversial, but I now believe that the way that we've been perceiving these stories has been naive, right? Because we think about it in the context of how we would respond to left-wingers carrying out violence. And we have condemned the very rare instances of left-wingers carrying out violence. Now, at the same time, the right wing not only did away with the department that was focused on right-wing extremism in this country, they also continuously make excuses for the violence, or they cover up the violence. I mean, you have to consider the fact that various law enforcement agencies throughout the country, whether we're talking about Border Patrol or local police departments, have been infiltrated by white supremacists. There have been numerous reports on that. No, they don't do anything about it, Jake, not because, there happens to be some sort of blind spot. They like this. They like this. They push this rhetoric on a regular basis. And then when the violence is actually committed, they don't condemn it.
Yeah, our own investigative reporter Ken Klippenstein on TYT Investigates got a internal document from the FBI where they said that white right-wing extremism like this one was a mid-level threat. They said black identity extremists was the highest threat there was. There's almost no shootings at all from black identity extremists. There's one massacre after another and planned massacres by white right-wing extremists. And so after Anna's right, after all of this, I was kind of dumbfounded by that. How could this be your job and you'd be that monumentally wrong about the threats? Because white right-wing extremists to them are not that big a threat to them, right? To the people in charge. Whereas the black identity extremists in their minds, even if they exist, and by the way, I had Daryl Johnson on here, who was a person who was in charge of investigating white right-wing extremists, a Republican in the Bush administration. And he said, yeah, they shut us down. And it was outrageous because we saw it bubbling up and we could have done something about it. And he explained that they also target a lot of left-wing groups. Some of them, and he's a Republican, so he's like some small fraction of them could be potentially dangerous. But the larger fraction, he admits, or the larger portion of it, are not at all dangerous. But he pointed out, but they are seen as a bigger threat to the system.
Yes, exactly. And just think about the double standard when it comes to the response to various groups, right? So you'll have these white supremacists and neo-Nazis chanting, "The Jews will not replace us." And you'll have someone like Donald Trump equivocating, saying that there are very fine people on both sides. But at the same time, think about the way he and others in the right wing talked about Black Lives Matter. What is the one thing that they kept referencing when it came to Black Lives Matter to paint them as a violent and dangerous group of people? That one time when a small group of individuals chanted "pigs in a blanket, watch them fry." And that was it. A few people chanted that, and that was all they needed to generalize about the entire Black Lives Matter movement.
In fact, they called them terrorists.
Exactly. No, they treat both sides very differently. We already know that. And we need to stop pretending as if they're against the violence on their side. They incite it, they encourage it with their rhetoric, and then when it's actually carried out, in some cases it's applauded by Trump by saying there's very fine people, and they'll provide a cover for it. And they'll deflect by saying, no, but Antifa, look at Antifa. In fact, there was a leaked House Republican memo that reporters in Florida were able to obtain. And it talked about the specific talking points that Republican lawmakers should use if they're questioned about white nationalism.
Yeah, so I want to make two quick points about what Anna just said. Number one, over the weekend, Donald Trump said Antifa should be labeled an organization of terror because they had clashes with Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, militia, and neo-Nazis in Portland. Now, Donald Trump made no tweets about the neo-Nazis or any of the extreme right-wing groups. He did not call them terrorists. He said the guys resisting them, the anti-fascists, should be called terrorists. Now, isn't that interesting? When Jews are targeted in Israel by Muslims, immediately they're called terrorists. And they should be because they go after civilians. But here in America, when you have white right-wing extremists targeting Jews, so I only use that because it's apples to apples, they go, no, they're not terrorists.
It's crazy.
How could they not be terrorists? They're targeting civilians for a political ideology and one that unites them, that ideology unites them. Yeah, I know, but they're white and they're right wingers and you're not allowed to criticize that in this country. Well, you gotta have at least some sort of reasonable standard that applies to everyone. Otherwise, stop using the word terrorist. This guy who was arrested was definitely attempting to be a terrorist.
So let's move on to a different part of this story that I think is important to cover. On the same weekend, a white supremacist who was threatening to shoot up a Jewish community center in Ohio was arrested. There was one other white supremacist who was arrested, this time in Connecticut. Brandon Wagshaw is his name. And the Connecticut man had amassed an arsenal of tactical weapons and body armor, and he may have been preparing for a mass shooting. He actually left a trail of racist and anti-trans postings online. And so what I found amazing about this particular story is that he had been kind of taunting and goading the FBI on social media for months, and they finally did something. He was arrested after a joint FBI local police investigation on a tip that the 22-year-old was trying to import large capacity rifle magazines from out of state. During the investigation, Wagshaw wrote a Facebook post that showed his interest in committing a mass shooting, leading to a raid on his house and also his arrest. Police say that they uncovered a weapons cache during the raid, including a titanium body armor and a combat helmet. And so I'm just gonna give you a few examples of the disgusting things that he posted online openly on Twitter. I support transgenders' rights to be some of the first in the gas chambers. He also said, I hate, and then he used the N-word. And then he showed this, he posted this strange photo of Donald Trump fighting Shinzo Abe of Japan. I don't know what this was about, but he was a Trump supporter. And I don't think it's far-fetched to know who inspired some of his ideology.
So Abe is actually allies with Trump, I think it's fair to say, and they work together on the North Korea issue. So him putting Trump against Abe is just, I guess, purely racist. But are you surprised by this guy being purely racist and having no connection to logic? Small points and a large one. Some of the avatars that they use on Twitter, I already noticed this, but you see it in this case too. Racists will use black people as their avatar, or black women, or attractive women, getting you to think, getting the uninitiated online to think, oh, it's a black woman saying terribly racist things, so it must be okay, right? No, they're just using that as their avatar. None of them are black, okay? And then of course he made reference to cheese pizza, as in Pizzagate. Lunatics, flock together, I suppose. And we're supposed to ignore all that. No, QAnon could be true. Pizzagate, I don't know. Look, nobody legitimate is saying that QAnon could be true. So I don't want to exaggerate, but there are tons and tons of QAnon followers and Pizzagate followers throughout the country. I've often talked about how one of my neighbors has a bumper sticker like that. But we're supposed to treat them like they're normal people. No, they're lunatics. I mean, in order to believe QAnon, you have to be not just you have to be beyond monumentally stupid. You have to have something mentally wrong with you to think, oh yeah, Mueller's part of a team that's gonna show that Trump's actually innocent and he's gonna arrest everybody that was against Trump, but he didn't do any of that. Even if you believe that insane theory before, well, after he didn't do it, you still believe it. Well, that's because you're a goddamn lunatic. And then so is it surprising that a guy who believes in Pizzagate in this particular case was looking to shoot people up and hated transgender people. But here comes the important point. The two biggest sources of his ire were transgender people and the FBI. Let me think of who's the one person who's constantly railing against both transgender people and the FBI.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, before Trump or even during the Trump administration, who rails against the FBI more than Trump does? And why? Why did Trump rail against the FBI? It was because he was being investigated.
Because he is a lifelong criminal, and a lot of his followers are criminals, so of course they hate the FBI. And then ironically, they'll turn around every time a cop shoots an unarmed black man and go, oh, I support cops, Blue Lives Matter. Oh, law enforcement coming for me when I'm looking to murder everybody. Oh, goddamn FBI. Or in the case of Trump, oh, now they want to uphold the law when I've broken 18 different laws, obstruction of justice, campaign finance violations, let alone his entire fraudulent business history. He's like, I never work with law enforcement. I think anyone who does is a rat. Okay, we should make that illegal working with law enforcement. He's literally said these things. I'm paraphrasing, but you can look it up. He says he's proud that he never worked with the FBI. Nobody should. That's what Trump says. And now his followers amass weaponry and talk about how the FBI is so bad and you should go after them. And transgender people and Latinos and Muslims and Jews, they're all so terrible and somebody should do something about it, but don't worry, I got the weapons. Gee, I wonder who encouraged them. This is not a legitimate debate. It's obviously Trump. Anyone making it a debate is just doing political correctness. Well, is it Trump or is it Bernie Sanders who's totally in favor of peace and in favor of every single one of those groups? Let's have a total nonsense debate about things that shouldn't be debated. Is the sky blue or is it yellow? I don't know. Let's have a debate. Why? Because we're cable news,
because it's easy. It's lazy, right? I mean, that is. It doesn't take much work. It doesn't take much production values. It allows you to, make the case that you are an objective news organization, when in reality, they're rehashing the same nonsense debate that doesn't need to be relitigated. We know where the racists are. We know how they're inciting violence. We know what the ramifications of that is. I think what's way more important is for them to do their jobs and actually, put that question to rest, because we already know the answer, and focus on what needs to be done to save the country from all the violence that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, in this case, the Connecticut guy, of course, didn't leave you to guess. He is a huge fan of Donald Trump on social media. So there was absolutely no question about it. And look, the debates aren't just because they want to pretend to be objective reporters. It's not objective to have a debate about this, it's neutral. And being a neutral reporter means you're a terrible reporter. That means you don't care about the facts, you don't care about being objective. You just want to be neutral to both political sides. Why? One of the reasons is access, of course. Another reason is, well, I don't want to offend any of my Republican viewers, so I'll lie on their behalf and pretend that it's neutral and even, and we can't quite tell if Donald Trump is encouraging people to do violence. I mean, look, the first person who told me about this, and she was so right, was Chelsea Manning, talking about stochastic terrorism. What Trump has done and what the right wing has done is they've turned their followers into ticking time bombs. All of them? Hell no, of course not. Look, about 35 to 40% of the country believes in Trump. They're not all ticking time bombs, they're not all extremists, but some portion of the right wing are extremists. And Trump has encouraged and encouraged and encouraged them. Oh, you're right to hate the transgender, you're right to hate the Muslims, and the Jews are always looking to renegotiate, and they're always running things, and et cetera, et cetera. And the list goes on, and I can show you video clips for each of these instances from Donald Trump. So it's not a legitimate debate. The only reason that the mainstream media debates it is because they do political correctness, because God forbid they should offend Republicans. And so they cover up the truth and the reality, which is that and the reality is scary. It's not one or two guys. There are ticking time bombs all across this country, all over the country. They have amassed weaponry. They go online and talking about how they want to hurt people in these different groups. Mm-hmm. Last thing is, I want to give a shout out to law enforcement. When we have the terrible training and too many people get shot by law enforcement in this country, we criticize them, but we are also a rare show that actually cares about the facts and give credit where credit is due, and we're not just one-sided in either direction. And here, the cops and law enforcement overall did a great job in catching 2 right-wing extremists before they actually killed anyone. So great credit to them for finding them and stopping them before someone got hurt.
All right, we got to take a break, and since we're speaking about the right wing covering for this right wing extremism, we're going to discuss Fox News and how they purposely edited a video that took place in Portland to make it appear as though Antifa were aggressors in an assault. It's unbelievable. Come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Members' comments first. Randy Lieb says, Cenk, you hit it. They want to be noticed. It doesn't matter for what or how vile the act is. And that's been true for a long time. Jesse22 Ray says, sorry, Cenk, was that a description of the suspect or our president? All too similar. On Twitter, David Simpson says, the Juggalos, fan group for Insane Clown Posse, were declared a gang by the FBI and put under surveillance. But white supremacists can't even be put on a watch list. I mean, it's mental. I mean, who's the Insane Clown Posse now? I think they're the guys in charge, unfortunately. And then finally, back to the member section, Jackson says, hey Anna, my fiance Jessica and I want to let you know how much we enjoyed catching up with the recent episodes of No Filter. We really appreciate how engaging and informative the show is, while being so much fun that it's one of the most bingeable shows on TYT. There's a shoulder shimmy.
Yes.
Okay, we encourage other members to keep checking out No Filter as we look forward to new episodes. Thanks to the No Filter team for all your great work. So Jackson, thank you, and Jessica, thank you as well. And everybody, if you want to watch it, the video version anytime you want, as always, for all of our shows, tyt.com/join, including, by the way, Agitprop.
Yes, all right, so let me tell you about Agitprop. It is Hassan Piker's newest show, and this week he's got some awesome guests. In fact, I'm a little salty about the awesome guests that he has on, including Mehdi Hassan, who's gonna be on soon. So that's on Tuesday, August 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. Pacific. Mehdi Hassan is awesome. I've been trying to get him on No Filter, so let's maybe start a pressure campaign to make that happen.
So that's gonna be Hassan squared, but if they disagree, it'll be Hassan on Hassan crime.
That's hilarious. By the way, that's not the only guest you can look forward to on Agitprop. You also have an episode with Michael Brooks coming up. So there's a baby picture of Michael Brooks, and he'll also be a guest on August 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. Pacific.
The Tuesday shows can be watched by everyone, tyt.com/live. The second hour on Fridays is just for members, so that's tyt.com/join.
And one final announcement, Aspiration is where you should be keeping your money. That is what I'm doing because it is an ethical bank that will not invest your cash in questionable corporations and companies. It's just a wonderful place to keep your money, and if you don't want them to charge you any fees, they don't have to charge you any fees. You get to decide. It's fantastic. Go to aspiration.com/TYT to open your account.
Win-win.
All right, let's get to the rest of the news.
They're not counter protesters, okay? You've been in the media a long time. Other outlets do this. It's called gaslighting. Tell a lie confidently, and isolate people from the truth, and you can get people to believe anything.
Fox and Friends decided to gaslit Americans, or gaslight Americans, I should say, during their coverage of Antifa and Proud Boys clashing this past weekend in Portland. Now, let me be clear that relatively speaking, these protests were not as violent as previous protests. However, there were a few instances of violence. Luckily, no one seems to have gotten hurt or killed, but there was video that was edited, I believe intentionally, to make it appear as though Antifa were the aggressors in one instance of violence during the weekend. So let me go ahead and show you that video, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
We talked about on Friday that there were going to be protests in Portland, and that happened over the weekend. The mayor of Portland said it was the worst case scenario has been avoided because no one died. That's at least Andy No. I was watching an interview with him. He said that's how the mayor decides that it's peaceful because there weren't any deaths. However, look at this video. There were 6 people that had injuries. There was concrete that was thrown. Apparently, there were metal and wooden poles that were confiscated by police. Bear spray and shields were confiscated. What do you think?
Well, let me get this straight. Your standard for success is, hey, well, nobody died.
Yeah.
I mean, is that for real?
But what did you make of the coverage regarding Antifa versus
Steve,
the right-wing
they're not counter-protesters, okay? You've been in the media a long time. Other outlets do this. It's called gaslighting. Tell a lie confidently, and isolate people from the truth, and you can get people to believe anything. Antifa are not counter-protesters. It is an anti-First Amendment. That's what it stands for. They tell you it stands for anti-fascist. It really is anti-First Amendment. They are an anti-First Amendment, ultra-violent terror group that wants to silence people's free speech.
So let me be clear about something. That video was intentionally edited to make it appear as though Antifa were the aggressors. That was not the case if you look at the full video, which we're about to show you. In fact, there have been widely circulated claims, including those made by reporters at the scene, that those riding in the shuttle bus were Proud Boys. It appears that they're actually members of the American Guard, a group the Anti-Defamation League labels a white supremacist organization. So I just want to be clear about the parties involved. It wasn't the Proud Boys, it was the American Guard, but they're also a white nationalist organization. They're the ones in the bus. But who started this scuffle or this violent attack? It was actually the individuals in the bus, and you're about to see that in the next video. Take a look.
He's got a hammer! Hey, no hammers! Oh, shit! Sorry, my language, he threw a hammer.
So you keep seeing this video of members of Antifa like using a hammer, right? And you think if you look at the edited video that the hammer belonged to them, they're the ones who used it. But if you watch the full video, which we just showed you, the hammer was from an individual in the bus. He was using it and then he threw it. At that point, someone from Antifa grabbed the hammer and then threw it back.
Yeah, I wonder if they brought the hammer because they thought they were Thor. Because these white nationalists are incredibly dangerous. They're also incredibly stupid. Like, oh yeah, let's bring a hammer. It'd be really cool. Anyway, so Proud Boys would claim that they're not white nationalists. So that's why part of the reason we're making the distinction. It also because it's important to get the story right. It's not them. And so I loved the projection that Bongo or whatever his name is makes. Okay, he's like, oh yeah, it's gaslighting when you tell a lie on purpose, and that's what a lot of the other stations do. Now let's show the fake video pretending that Antifa brought the hammer, okay, and that they were the violent ones. And by the way, don't tell people that the other side is filled with white nationalists and neo-Nazis. Neo-Nazis were also on the right-wing side of that parade. Donald Trump tweeting throughout the weekend, the Antifa, the anti-fascists should be called an organization of terror, right? How about the neo-Nazis? No, they're fine, okay? No mention of them at all from Donald Trump. Fox News, I can't believe the anti-fascists. How about the fascists? Oh no, they're fine, they're okay. Poor fascists. They were set upon by these guys who are anti-fascist. Why didn't they just let the fascists run the city?
Yeah. Look,
oh, oops.
So while Fox News is airing this edited video that doesn't give you the full context of what went down, I'm also incredibly curious whether Fox did any coverage of those protesters who were nearly run over and killed by a prison guard in Rhode Island who tried to run over them. Did they do any coverage of that?
Well, actually they did, and they blamed it on the protesters.
That was on Fox Business. Lou Dobbs claimed that the protesters who were sitting on the ground when the truck started to attempt to run them over were the aggressors, that they're the ones who committed assault. He literally said that hitting someone's car is a form of assault.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Anyway, so
can I just say, look, my long held position on Antifa has been one of concern. Okay, so I'm worried that sometimes the milkshaking. I don't like that stuff. Okay, because it allows the right wing to equate massacres that the right wing does, right wing groups do, with throwing milkshakes. And I don't agree with what they did to Andy No, and the list goes on. Right.
By the way, they used that edited video from Andy No. So that's one other thing that you should keep in mind.
It doesn't justify hitting Andy No, right. but he loves doing edited videos. He's a piece of crap, and there's no need to make him a martyr by hitting him. Just point out what a piece of crap he is. Okay. Anyway, but I do have to say, as these fascists, want to, basically take control of the streets, and as they are encouraged by the current leader of the country, and as they do mass shooting after mass shooting, it is important and good to have some young folks on the left going, not on our watch. So we're drawing a line, and you want to protest. I hope that the line is, if you want to protest, have at it, Hoss. It's a free country. You want to do anything violent? You want to bring a hammer? Okay, no, not on our watch. Okay.
So look, so you're right. I mean, I have mixed feelings about Antifa, because whenever they use violence, the left loses its moral high ground, even though the level of violence is not the equivalent of what we've seen on the right wing. But why give them an argument that they can use against the left? Don't carry out violence. However, there have been cases, many cases, where Antifa has used the right strategy. And that certainly happened over the weekend, because they severely outnumbered, or I should say significantly outnumbered, the Proud Boys protesters, right? So showing up in solidarity, showing up in large numbers, and showing that hate will not stand in Portland, I think is important. But don't be the instigators of violence, don't use violence. And I get it, it's hard. I remember when we were in Miami, Florida for the debates, we had nonviolence training because we knew there were gonna be agitators there. We knew there were gonna be people who were gonna try to get under our skin. And you guys know me, okay? I know me. I know that if I get provoked, things will happen. But there was a lot of power in restraint, and there was a lot of power in allowing these individuals to look like complete and utter lunatics while we were doing our thing.
Yeah, look, we love to fight back at the Young Turks. Nobody mistakes that. But we do it rhetorically and politically, and I'm gonna get to the best part in a sec. But if you get dragged into the mud with them physically, then the media and the rest of the country goes, oh, both sides are crazy, right? Whereas if they're just screaming like spoiled children / lunatics that they are, they just look like weirdos, whereas you're doing a legitimate political movement. So be smart about it, both for moral reasons, but also strategic reasons, which gets to the most important point. Look, so those guys in the streets in Charlottesville, Portland, et cetera, the right wing, there is some import, and I like this, some people are standing their ground and saying, look, we're not gonna let you cross the line of physicality and violence. But the more important thing that the right wing did and the fascists did was they captured the government in the name of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump came in and won for the fascists. That's why when they chanted in Charlottesville, the Jews will not replace us, Trump said there was very fine people on that side. That's the fascists winning. And I can go on and on about his attacks, whole scale on Muslims, Latinos, gay people, and the list goes on and on and on. That is the fascists winning and capturing the government. Well, we can do likewise. So let's get a progressive to win the presidency and capture the government. Then the full might and force of the United States government is on our side. That is much wiser strategically, politically, and for everything that you want to accomplish. Now, this video will trigger the right wing. They'll be like, oh, did you hear that? The leftists want to capture the government. Goddamn right I do, okay? You capture the government, why can't we? Oh, no, of course the right wing should always rule, and white nationalists like Donald Trump being president is normal. Well, unfortunately it is normal. There's been a lot of white nationalist presidents. Well, there's no reason why there can't be a left wing, an actual progressive president. Now that happens very rarely. And when it does though, guys like FDR have been very, very strong, and strong on behalf of all of the American people. And so we can do that. It's called a democracy. You know how you capture a government? You vote. And so get out there and act politically and kick their ass politically, so that then all of a sudden, and you might say, you might be a little skeptical, hey, listen, there's a lot of issues with the cops, there's a lot of issues with the military, et cetera. But they would be working for the commander in chief, and that would mean progressives are in charge. And that is a very scary thought for the right wing, and that's a very scary thought for the establishment. And to which I say, fantastic. Wouldn't it be amazing if someone who actually cared about the American people was in charge? Let's go make that happen.
All right, so let's take a break. When we come back, we have an update on the cop who put Eric Gardner in a chokehold. And also, Gavin Newsom in California signed some lethal force legislation. What does that mean for police in California? We'll give you the details on that and more when we return.